Your engine is running low on coolant in the middle of nowhere. There's no auto parts store for miles, no gas station in sight, and the temperature light just flickered on. All you've got is a bottle of water rolling around in the back seat. The temptation is obvious. It's water, it'll cool something down, you'll deal with it properly later. So you pour it in and the gauge drops back to normal. Problem solved, right? Not even close. Over the next 24 hours of driving, that single decision can trigger 4 separate destructive processes happening at once inside your engine: physical, mechanical, chemical, and electrical, all while your dashboard shows absolutely nothing wrong. No warning light, no temperature spike, just quiet, invisible damage accumulating with every mile. Here's exactly what's happening under the hood when you do this, why it's so much worse than people assume, and how to undo it if you've already made the call. Most drivers think of coolant as basically antifreeze, something you need in the winter so your radiator doesn't crack, and otherwise an afterthought. That's a huge misunderstanding of what the fluid actually does. Its real primary job is being an engineered high-pressure heat transfer fluid, loaded with corrosion inhibitors, lubricants, and additives specifically chosen to work with the metals in your engine. The antifreeze property is almost a side effect. When you dump that out and replace it with plain water, you're not just swapping one liquid for another, you're stripping the entire cooling system of its chemical defense system in one move. Let's start with the most basic property, boiling point. A standard 50-50 mix of coolant and water, sealed under a 15 psi radiator cap, raises the boiling point of the whole system to somewhere around 265 degrees F. Pure water under that exact same pressure boils at roughly 250 degrees F. On paper, 15 degrees doesn't sound dramatic. But here's the catch: your dashboard temperature gauge is measuring the average bulk temperature of the coolant, not what's happening at the metal surface itself, which is where the real danger lives. Picture the inside of an aluminum cylinder head, specifically around the exhaust port runners, the channels where superheated exhaust gas exits the combustion chamber. During normal driving, that localized metal surface can easily exceed 300 degrees F, even while your gauge sits comfortably in the middle of the dial showing something like 200 degrees F. That gap between what you see on the dashboard and what's actually happening at the metal is the whole problem. When plain water passes over that ultra-hot surface, it doesn't wait for the bulk fluid to reach its boiling point. It starts boiling locally right against the metal in a process engineers call nucleate boiling. Microscopic steam bubbles form directly on the internal cooling jacket walls. And here's why that's catastrophic. Steam is a gas, and gases are terrible conductors of heat compared to liquids. So instead of coolant pulling heat away from that hot spot, you get a thin, invisible layer of steam sitting right against the metal, acting like a blanket that traps heat in instead of letting it escape. This is called film boiling, and it's genuinely dangerous because it's self-reinforcing. The more heat gets trapped, the hotter the metal gets, the more steam forms, the worse the insulation gets. Within seconds, that localized spot on the cylinder head can spike to temperatures far beyond what the material was designed to handle, while your dashboard needle doesn't move an inch. That uneven, localized expansion puts serious mechanical stress on the head gasket, specifically around the fire rings that seal each cylinder, and it's exactly the kind of stress that leads to a blown head gasket, sometimes with zero warning before it happens. Those microscopic steam bubbles don't just sit still once they form, they get carried along by the flow of coolant, traveling through the engine's internal passages toward the water pump. And that's where things get mechanically violent. As those bubbles move from the high-heat, lower-pressure zones near the cylinder head toward the higher-pressure zone near the water pump impeller, the surrounding pressure change forces them to collapse, and it happens almost instantly. When a steam bubble collapses against or near a metal surface, it doesn't just quietly disappear. It implodes, firing a microscopic jet of fluid inward with tremendous localized force that's been measured in engineering studies of cavitation at levels equivalent to well over 100,000 pounds per square inch concentrated on a spot smaller than a grain of sand. Now imagine that happening not once but thousands of times per minute, every minute the engine runs. That's cavitation, and it functions exactly like a microscopic jackhammer running non-stop inside your water pump housing. Each individual impact is tiny, invisible to the naked eye, but multiply it by the sheer number of collapses happening continuously, and you get real, physical pitting. Microscopic craters hammered directly into the aluminum blades of the water pump impeller and the interior walls of the block. Under sustained driving on plain water, say, a full day of highway miles, city stop and go, maybe some hills, that pitting can start appearing on the trailing edges of the impeller blades within hours, not weeks or months. And when the impeller starts losing material, it loses its ability to efficiently push fluid through the system. Flow drops, cooling gets worse. Which is deeply ironic because the entire reason you put water in there in the first place was to keep the engine cool, and cavitation damage actively works against that goal from day one. There's a second issue running in parallel that people almost never think about: lubrication. Coolant isn't just a heat transfer fluid, it's formulated with synthetic lubricants specifically to protect the water pump's mechanical face seal, a spring-loaded assembly that keeps coolant from leaking out around the rotating pump shaft. Plain water carries none of that lubrication. So instead of a smooth, protected interface, you get dry friction between the carbon and ceramic seal faces every time the pump shaft spins. That friction generates heat. That heat hardens the rubber and elastomer components of the seal, and within days, not months, you can start seeing coolant or water weeping out of the pump's designated weep hole, which is usually the first visible external sign that the seal has already failed internally. This is the mechanism most drivers have genuinely never heard of, and it might be the most destructive of all four. A modern engine isn't built from one single metal, it's a combination of dissimilar metals all sitting inside the same closed cooling loop. Aluminum cylinder heads, engine blocks that might be cast iron or aluminum depending on the vehicle. Brass fittings inside the heater core, copper in the radiator, and steel components like the thermostat housing and bypass valves. Here's the basic electrochemistry. Submerge two different metals in any conductive fluid and you've accidentally built a battery. One metal is more electrochemically active than the other, and it starts sacrificing electrons, literally giving up material, to the less active metal nearby. This is galvanic corrosion, and it's a real, measurable electrical current flowing through your cooling system every time the engine runs. This is precisely the threat that commercial engine coolants are engineered to neutralize. Modern formulas contain sophisticated corrosion inhibitors, silicates, phosphates, nitrates, and in newer formulations, organic acid technology compounds, that chemically bond to the metal surfaces on a near molecular level, forming an invisible protective film that blocks the galvanic current from doing damage. It's genuinely advanced chemistry, engineered specifically for the combination of metals sitting in your particular engine. Tap water has zero, literally none, of those protective inhibitors. What it does have instead is a cocktail of dissolved minerals, calcium, magnesium chlorides, sometimes silicates from the treatment process itself. All of that turns plain tap water into what's essentially an aggressive electrolyte, a fluid that's actually better at conducting galvanic current than distilled or engineered coolant would be. The moment tap water fills those cooling jackets, a microscopic but very real galvanic current begins flowing from the more active metal, typically the aluminum cylinder head, toward the less active metal, stripping aluminum ions directly out of the structural matrix of the part. Within roughly 8 to 12 hours of thermal cycling, meaning the engine heating up and cooling down through normal driving, aluminum surfaces exposed to uninhibited tap water start forming a visible layer of hydrated aluminum oxide, which shows up as a chalky white residue coating the internal passages. It's not cosmetic, that's structural aluminum being converted into oxide and washed away. If your vehicle happens to run a cast iron engine block paired with aluminum cylinder heads, a combination that's still extremely common in trucks and SUVs across the country, the reaction moves even faster and gets more aggressive. Iron exposed to hot, oxygenated water oxidizes essentially on contact, forming ferric oxide, plain old rust, within just a few hours of driving. As you continue on through that 24-hour window, that fresh rust scales off the cylinder wall cooling jackets and starts circulating through the entire system as an abrasive brown slurry. That suspended iron oxide behaves like liquid sandpaper, grinding away at soft rubber bypass hoses, eroding internal thermostat seals, and scoring the plastic housing channels used in most modern thermostat assemblies. If you ever drain a system that's been run on water for a day and the fluid that comes out is murky and brown, that discoloration is direct proof that grams of your engine's structural iron have already dissolved and turned into abrasive sludge circulating through your cooling passages. Here's a detail that almost nobody accounts for when they think through this scenario. Not all water is created equal, and the water most people actually use in a roadside emergency is close to the worst-case option. Unless you happen to be carrying a sealed jug of steam-distilled water in your trunk, which to be fair is a smart thing to keep on hand, emergency water usually comes from wherever's convenient. a garden hose at a stranger's house, a spigot at a gas station, or a plastic bottle grabbed off a convenience store shelf. All of that is municipal tap water, treated with chlorine and fluorine and various mineral salts specifically to make it safe for humans to drink. Perfectly fine for you. Genuinely damaging for an internal combustion engine. The key property here is what water treatment engineers call hardness, essentially, the concentration of dissolved calcium and magnesium ions in the water. Tap water in most American cities carries meaningful hardness, and that becomes a real problem the moment it gets hot. When hard water is heated above roughly 140 degrees F inside the narrow internal passages of your engine, those dissolved calcium and magnesium ions can't stay in solution anymore. They precipitate out and form hard calcium carbonate scale, chemically the exact same substance as the white crust you'd find built up inside an old tea kettle or coffee maker that's never been descaled. And because heat transfer happens fastest at the cylinder walls and exhaust ports, the areas doing the most cooling work, that's exactly where scale forms fastest too. It's a cruel bit of physics. The parts of the engine that most need to stay clear and efficient are the parts getting coated first. Calcium carbonate scale is, unfortunately, an excellent thermal insulator, hundreds of times more resistant to heat transfer than raw aluminum or steel. Even a microscopic layer, something like 1/100th of an inch thick, can measurably reduce heat transfer efficiency, in some cases by as much as 40%. That trapped heat builds up inside the combustion chamber and can trigger chronic engine detonation, what most people know as spark knock or pinging, especially under heavy acceleration or load. As that scale continues to build and eventually flakes off the hot engine walls, it doesn't just disappear. It travels directly downstream into your primary heat exchangers, the radiator and the heater core. Modern radiators are built with ultra-thin aluminum tubes lined with internal turbulators, tiny fins designed to maximize surface area and keep the fluid turbulent for better heat dissipation. These channels are narrow, often no wider than the thickness of a credit card, which makes them extremely vulnerable to blockage from floating scale particles and dislodged rust flakes. Within that same 24-hour window, dislodged scale and rust migrate into the top tank of the radiator and start lodging in the entrance ports of those microchannels, permanently shutting off coolant flow through entire sections of the core. A partially clogged radiator loses a real chunk of its heat-shedding capacity, especially at idle, which forces your electric cooling fans to run continuously at maximum speed just to compensate accelerating fan motor wear and, in some vehicles, drawing enough current to strain the charging system too. There's a secondary casualty in all of this that almost never comes up when people talk about cooling system damage, and that's your vehicle's interior heating and ventilation system. Your car's heater core is, mechanically speaking, a miniature radiator hidden deep inside the dashboard, built from ultra-thin aluminum or copper tubing designed to pull heat off the engine coolant and blow it into the cabin airstream. Because of how it's plumbed into the cooling loop, the heater core often sits at one of the highest physical points in the entire system. And that matters because steam pockets created by localized microboiling naturally rise and tend to collect right there. When steam pockets replace liquid coolant inside the heater core matrix, the local concentration of dissolved minerals and dissolved oxygen spikes dramatically in that trapped pocket, far higher than in the rest of the system, which accelerates corrosion specifically along the thin aluminum seam welds holding the core together. Run mineral-rich tap water through that system for even a single day, and you can meaningfully degrade those delicate interior welds, setting up microscopic pinhole leaks. The first sign most drivers ever notice is turning on the defroster on a cold morning and watching a fine mist of atomized coolant and water vapor spray onto the inside of the windshield, a strange, oily haze that wipers can't quite clear, because it's coming from inside the vents, not outside the glass. Once that happens, there's no simple patch. Repairing or replacing a corroded heater core typically requires a technician to tear down a significant portion of the interior dashboard just to access it, a labor-intensive job that, at most American repair shops, easily runs between $1,500 and $2,000, sometimes more depending on the vehicle. So let's say you're past the point of prevention. You already ran water for a day, maybe longer, and now you want to fix it properly. Here's the critical thing to understand up front. Simply draining the water out through the bottom radiator petcock and pouring fresh green or pink coolant back in is nowhere near enough to undo what's already happened, and doing only that will actively waste your new coolant. Draining through the radiator's lower valve typically only removes somewhere around 60% of the total fluid volume in the system. The rest, several quarts of dirty, mineral-loaded, highly oxygenated water, stays trapped inside the engine block's internal passages and inside the heater core, which sits high up and doesn't drain gravity-fed the same way. If you pour fresh, concentrated coolant directly on top of that leftover contaminated water, the residual mineral salts and rust particles will immediately start consuming the corrosion-inhibiting additives in your brand new coolant, exhausting them and rendering that fresh fluid essentially useless within a matter of months. To actually restore the system properly after a day of running on water, you need a full multi-step flush protocol using distilled water and a dedicated cooling system cleaning compound. Here's the process, step by step. First, drain the raw water completely while the engine is fully cool. Never do this on a hot engine, both for safety and to avoid warping components with rapid temperature change. Open the radiator drain valve, and if your engine has accessible block drain plugs, open those too, since that's where a meaningful amount of the trapped fluid is hiding. Second, refill the entire system with pure steam distilled water. It's inexpensive, usually under $2 a gallon at any grocery store, combined with a high-quality citric acid or chelating cooling system flush compound. Citric acid works by chemically reacting with both the ferric oxide rust and the calcium carbonate scale, dissolving them out of the system without etching or damaging the aluminum, iron, or rubber components it comes into contact with. Third, start the engine and turn your interior heater to maximum heat. This opens the heater control valve and ensures the flush compound actually circulates through the heater core, not just the main block and radiator loop. Let the vehicle run until it reaches full operating temperature, and keep it running for at least 20 to 30 minutes so the compound has time to work through every passage in the system. Fourth, once that flush cycle is done, let the engine cool completely before draining the now murky chemical mixture out of the system. Fifth, perform at least 2 additional rinse cycles using pure distilled water alone, no flush chemical this time, just clean water, running the engine between each drain cycle. Keep repeating this until the fluid coming out of the petcock runs completely clear and tests neutral on a basic pH strip, which you can pick up cheaply at any hardware or pool supply store. Only once every trace of mineral scale, dissolved iron, and leftover flush chemical has been thoroughly rinsed out should you introduce fresh, factory-specified coolant. And here's the detail that matters most. Always use the exact original equipment manufacturer coolant specification listed in your owner's manual. Whether that's inorganic additive technology, organic acid technology, or hybrid organic acid technology, mixed at a precise 50-50 ratio with pure distilled water, never tap water. Using tap water to dilute concentrated coolant, even at this final step, reintroduces the exact same calcium, chlorine, and magnesium ions that cause the scale buildup and galvanic corrosion in the first place, undermining the entire flush you just did.